Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. This could very well be the bottom of the barrel between each of the series. Conflicted between Predator 2018 and AVP-R, I gotta say I honestly don't know which is worse. You choose though, this is up to you on this one right here. Few notes though. I want to say because of the lack of figures that I own from this movie, or the lack of figures that came out, that will be kind of minimized a little bit, so this will be more of a review towards the movie. But we will touch on the action figures a bit though, because there is something to talk about regarding that. So I just want to throw that out there before we get too far. Alright, so here's the thing about this movie. It's an underwhelming film. Once I loved this movie, and I considered it to be the best Alien Predator movie next to the original Alien, Aliens, and Predator 1. This is an honest opinion that came out of me at one point when I was like 16 or 17. As time went on though, I started to see that this was a flawed movie, and it just hasn't aged well in my opinion. Some movies have aged well, this isn't one of them. When I reflect on this movie coming out, I really remember being on AVP Galaxy, like literally every day when I was in high school, looking up news on the movie. Now, I don't know how many people remember this, but this movie was once called Aliens vs. Predator Survival of the Fittest. Somewhere along the line though, the name was changed. They dropped Survival of the Fittest because I guess the Darwin bit wasn't working, and they dropped it to Alien vs. Predator 2, and then after that, enter Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. This was a much anticipated movie for me. It was pushing for a hard rated R rating, more blood, more guts, more traditional predators and xenomorphs returning to their ridge dome. It was trying to deliver on everything that the 2004 Alien vs. Predator had misdelivered on. I gotta agree, Wolf is an amazing predator, and it's even named after a Pulp Fiction character, Winston Wolfe. If you don't get the reference, allow me to clarify. In the movie, Winston is known for taking care of Jules and Vincent's mistakes. Well, this is Wolf's job, cleaning up after Celtic Chopper Scar's mistakes, which birthed the Predalien. Now on the other hand, I want to talk about this first still. When we first saw the Alien and the Predator here, Alien fans were kind of like, meh, you know, it was just one of those things. I think the dome just looked really awkward on the body, and something about the neck. I wasn't overall concerned about the overall design in this still. I was more so concerned about how they would portray the xenomorph. Because to me, I feel like you gotta handle both creatures gracefully, and I felt like they did well in the original AVP. Both worlds won, even though I'm sure some fans were arguing, you know, who was stronger and why this should have happened and why this shouldn't have happened. The first Red Band trailer dropped and several clips led to more questions. Some clips that never even made it into the movie. So you're probably asking, how did this get received? How did the fans view it? Well, we'll just say we couldn't see much.
It's not bright enough. What the It's not bright enough.
Yeah, buddy, you don't say. This movie was plagued with bad lighting, and it lived by the idea, we'll fix it in post-production. Furthermore, sometimes I legit believe this movie had bad lighting intentionally. That way, it could kind of cover up how bad some certain scenes look, you know? That if you can't see it, you don't know it's there. At the same time though, the trailer lighting looks better and more bearable than the actual movie you actually are paying admission to see. AVP-R went in hoping to make a decent strike at the box office on Christmas Day 2007. It was trying to follow up such movies as Juno, I Am Legend, Alvin and The Chimpmunks, but it had a huge disadvantage at the box office considering it was rated R. So, the movie and the storyline, I'm gonna level with you. There is no storyline, but if you insist, our story takes place after the events of AVP. For whatever reason, the movie decides to reshoot the Predalien birth sequence, which looks horrible compared to the original one. After an unspecified amount of time, the Predalien wreaks havoc on the ship, attacking various predators. One predator pulls a boneheaded move and shoots through the ship accidentally as the Predalien dodges it. Our ship ends up crashing near Gunson, Colorado. This is where the central movie is going to be taking place. He sends out a distress signal, and this is where Wolf comes into play. Before I dog on this movie too much, I want to say this movie gives us a nice look at the Predator homeworld. It's very brief, but it's something to behold, and something that needs to be explored more. I can't believe it hasn't been dived into more, definitely it could be done in the future. But just one of those things that's probably a highlight and a shining moment of this movie, that I can't trash just because I dislike this movie itself. We end up meeting our cast, and unfortunately the cast really feels like B-rate movie characters from sci-fi originals, those ones you watch at 3 a.m. when you're bored and have nothing to do. Because I don't feel like anybody I really care about, And this movie attempts to go in and give us a Sigourney Weaver kind of look like. She kind of acts just like Ripley, and she has a little girl with her that just yells "mommy" and just screams.
Someone get her out of here!
This movie attempts to give us a side plot with our young character Ricky, who's involved in the most cliche storyline that you could totally imagine. You know, a love interest in a cute girl, her boyfriend's a dick, he'd simply kick his ass if he knew the truth, listens to Iron Maiden, maybe. I kid about that bit. But this side plot is almost like a 90s teen drama storyline. Oh boy, how the intelligence of the Alien series has long fallen away. Never mind the Xenomorph's portrayal in the original movies, because now it is just a brain-dead zombie. No more. Gone is the perfect organism. After Wolf attempts to clean up the mess, the situation goes from bad to worse. The Xenomorphs enter the small town of Gunnison, Colorado. Our Predator is basically a 3-in-1 men's shampoo deal. It's a Xenomorph, it's a Predator, it's also a Queen. I'm not gonna hate on that too much. I mean, you know, it's a little adventurous for what they're going for. I think that basically they wanted to make sure that Chet, as it's called by the way, I think they were trying to make sure that the Predator and Chet kind of had a final boss feeling, you know, where it's gotta be more focus on it, you know. Adding a Queen would have added a bit more to the mix. This movie, I'll admit, the fight scenes are kind of fun, you know, what you can see, but it relies heavy off of other references from other movies. It kind of reminds me of that coworker, you know, that tells that same joke all the time, and each time you hear it, you know, you laugh, but each time he tells it, you laugh a little less. That's kind of how this movie is. It's just like Frank, the coworker. It insists on giving us a character named Dallas, a character that looks like Ripley, as I mentioned, a reference to Hawkins on a tombstone, yelling "get to the chopper" and reuse sound effects from old movies. Near the end, the movie attempts to give us kind of, you know, a moment to where the characters kind of have to choose what they're going to do to survive. Are they going to trust the big bad government is actually going to do an airlift? Or are they going to go down to the hospital and get into the helicopter, commandeer it, fly off, and escape before a potential nuke? Because they grow kind of, you know, suspicious about the fact that basically they're being sent to the center of the town. This apparently becomes the only choice because apparently the exits are compromised, if you want to believe what the Colonel is saying, you know, because he basically lied to them in the first place, kinda. Anyway, though, so I had to do a little fun. I had to have a little fun because I wanted to look up the actual town of Gunnison, Colorado. So the actual town of Gunnison, Colorado is about 4 square miles, which is only kind of half the town where I'm from. A decent amount of exits exist. But I'm going to imply that, you know, for some reason, you know, maybe the traffic was all backed up, you know, they just couldn't get out, you know, I don't know why the armored vehicle just couldn't just plow through half those vehicles on the road. So I don't know if anybody remembers Nuke Map, but I went there and I went ahead and had a little fun. Now, if my sources are correct, I understand this is a 200k in nuke. And I went ahead and detonated and, well, yeah, that better be a fast helicopter, because there's a lot of variables that probably would have caused that helicopter to not make it, but you know, our characters do. Because, you know, movie's got a movie. The movie comes to a close and we get our first look at Mrs. Yutani, and it's supposed to kind of give us a look at what could possibly happen in the next movie, because we now possess Predator technology. Unfortunately, this never happened. There was talk there was supposed to be an AVP 3, but eventually, I think that Fox decided to cut their losses. You know, they made their money back on this movie, but, you know, the Predator and Alien series together were kind of waning, and from there, both movies were just separated, and have been separated since then. Wolf is definitely the saving grace of this movie. He has a lot in common with Fugitive, you know, a Predator that is in a bad movie that's kind of forgettable at certain points, but you kind of gotta love him though, just the way it's portrayed. The only difference is Wolf is given more screen time and he dies off pretty dignified. On the other hand, Fugitive didn't get that treatment. Gotta love them dual shoulder cannons and that handgun that he uses. I want to admit also, the egg barfing made me uneasy as a kid watching this. It's a dumb fun movie. I can watch it. It's just one of those movies so that it's less desirable than the others. Okay, so I promised to touch on the toys at least a bit. So this predates when I was collecting, and honestly, I wish that I grabbed more, but I only grabbed about 2 figures. This was kind of, you know, before like the after-price market had just skyrocketed. Most of the figures were variants of Wolf. Masked, unmasked, cloaked, open mandibles, closed, you know, the typical. They went nuts. These were all in basically one simple sculpt, and it was kind of awkward the way it was, because, you know, it's kind of at this little bent type thing or whatever, you know. A lot of NECA figures were very simple, you know. Back then they just had like cut joints, and the articulation was very minimal. I mean, you can look at most of them, even like the Tomb Raider figures, you know, for example. But where the Wolf figure actually really shines is it has a bunch of accessories. Like, they loaded up each of these figures with almost everything you can think of from the movies, so that is pretty interesting. You know, they had more to work with versus, say, like the Predator's 2010 figures, which there wasn't a lot they could really throw in there. Here, though, they made up for that, you know, and really, I'm going to say, I appreciate these figures, like they're old. They're definitely dated, you know. The paint jobs definitely are nowhere on par with what they can do today. It's just that, looking back at them in retrospect though, they're fun figures, just they could use some upgrades. I never got a chance to get the Xenomorph, that was the one that evaded me, but I will say just looking at it and judging by what I'm seeing in reviews, the articulation was actually better than the other two. So that's probably one of the things that kind of bums me out, but I'm still holding out that someday they're going to re-release them and give it ultimate treatment that even surpasses the last Xenomorph figure. But I did grab one Predalien, the closed mandible version. There is an open version. It's a great figure. It's alright, the sculpt is pretty decent. I like the fact that dreadlocks are actually pliable, like they're not like sculpted and stuck together like some of the early Predators, or even that Wolf suffers from. That's one of the biggest pluses on this. But the big thing about this though, is the fact this figure is top heavy, like the weight of it. You have a little stand you could put it on. Yeah, Neca had stands, like, for figures, like each of these had a little mud slabs, or what do you want to call them, but the top heavy figure and its weight shifts to one side and it's almost always falling over. All of these figures could be done better. Neca has already stated they're going to revisit. Right now, we're only left with pictures that have leaked on the internet. It has been 5 years since we've seen this picture of Wolf that has surfaced. So, I don't know, we just gotta keep waiting. I know there's been a lot of fans that are really getting a little disgruntled and a little uneasy with having to wait as long, you know, and obviously we have the last line which needs to be finished. But it's widely anticipated that Chet, Wolf, and the Xenomorphs will get the treatment they deserve. Just because the movie is underwhelming doesn't mean the toy line is a complete waste of time.